You're listening to Where You Live with Gene Sullivan.
Welcome back to Where You Live. I'm Gene Sullivan, broadcasting from the True North Painting Studios. The show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency, and Extreme Exteriors. Before we get back into our story that's taking place in Delaware, where a House representative says what we need is another layer of government. We need an ombudsman office to step in so that homeowner disputes in HOAs can be resolved. And that's because she doesn't believe that people have the faith or the ability or the know-how, I guess, to be able to resolve matters as adults with one another. And before we get back into that, I want to just let our listeners know we've got a free gift for you. We put together a bi-monthly newsletter called What's New. A lot of what we will delve into as topics on the show. We write about in further detail. People that we have on the show are also authors of that newsletter as well. It's yours free for the asking. Give us a call during the week at New Concepts at 952-922-2500. Ask for Lori. She'll make sure that you start receiving your free copy either electronically or by mail. So we have this situation, and I said right before the break, go through and say, what is it that we need to do in how to resolve an issue like this? For this House representative to make the leap and say, just because there's a dispute among people living in that same community or HOA, and the fact that they don't know how to work it out, trying to take care of everything for them is kind of like putting someone in a sterile environment. And like I said in the last segment, you don't do that to keep someone healthy and well. We actually give in the flu shot an actual piece of the virus so that people actually build up an immunity to that in their body. Their body's got to fight it. They've got to deal with it in order to come out on the other side. That's how vaccinations work. That's what makes people stronger. And I am contending that when you take away and say, we want to take away all stress whatsoever, what you're doing is you're creating a society of victims, of people who say, I can't deal with this myself. Well, how could the Hobarts have dealt with this? Well, as I mentioned before at the very beginning, we're talking about a 23-unit townhome association. 23 units, 23 owners in 23 homes. They're so small that it is, of course, self-managed. That's probably why some of the issues are taking place, because had this board president been getting advice and had been had consulted with a management company, she would not have been doing some of the dumb, ridiculous things that she did that caused all of this to take place, to go to a lawsuit. But what happens, and it's interesting in this article, it goes on to say that the Hobarts weren't the only people who had a dispute in this Maple Hill Homeowners Association. It said this grew out of a couple years long feud between the board president and several neighbors. Now, if they are being accurate with the person who wrote this article, several neighbors, let's talk about that. One means one, a couple means two, several means three or more, right? So you could have 3 or 4. Would that be considered several? Well, if we're talking about several, could it be 5, 3 to 5 maybe? That's several homeowners, several neighbors that are concerned. Well, if you have several people, you're talking about well over 10% of the homeowners association in dispute, possibly 1 out of 5 that don't like what's going on with this board president. And if that is the case, what could be done? Well, it says in this particular case, the Hobarts were fighting this for 5 years. Well, let's take a look at this a little more closely. What takes place every year in a homeowners association? let's see, what is it? Oh, there's something called the annual meeting of all members. And what takes place? At the annual meeting will be a place where the board will come to all the other members, and they will have a full accounting, a disclosure of their fiduciary responsibility in taking care and managing the association. They will give a snapshot, a year-end financial statement of the association if people haven't gotten anything in the meantime. They will go through generally highlights of what took place in the year. People can ask questions. But one of the most important things that takes place in every annual HOA homeowners meeting every year in every city around the country is there is an election for new officers on the board. And if you have 5 people on the board and they all are on a 3-year term, in a 5-year period, no matter how you slice and dice it, you're probably going to have the opportunity in 5 years of replacing not one, but all 5 board members. And what is it that these homeowners could be doing instead of dealing with this for a second year, a third year, a fourth year, they get to a point where a state house representative says, "Oh, we got to help these people out." Well, you can participate. You can participate and use that freedom, that liberty that you've been given as citizens of this great country. And we talk about it over and over again. The only reason we have elected officials who have authority over us is because we give them our consent. Some people say, "Well, I don't want to be involved. I don't think I want to. Don't put that on me. I don't want to have to go to the annual meeting and have to participate in voting." Or people say, "I don't like anybody that's on the board, but I don't want to be on the board." Well, you take away all of the avenues that are afforded and given you to make change then, don't you? If you say, "I'm not going to attend, so I'm not going to vote," or "I'm not going to participate, and I'm not going to be involved." Well, if you continue to choose that, you get what you deserve. And so you've got a person like this board president who is making arbitrary decisions to the detriment of the association. This entire feud and legal battle has cost the association over $45,000. How ridiculous is that for a 23-unit homeowner association and a board member to spend $45,000 on something that a lot of people disagree with, but nobody's getting involved? It just seems to be silly. We don't need more laws. We don't need another layer of government. You got to realize that if you keep turning to government over and over again and say, "You know what, we don't know how to resolve this," you know how to resolve it. You just don't want to do what is afforded you according to those governing documents. And in this particular case, it would be going to that annual meeting and electing that bum of a board president out of office and putting someone else in. Let's see, someone else who will actually go to the P.O. box and actually collect the envelopes and make sure the checks get in the association's account. And stop all of this foolishness. But in this particular case, we've got Representative Smith who's saying, "You know what, we need this House bill where we need an ombudsman." But here's what she said. She said, "We're going to have an ombudsman, and they'll have a couple of people that will work for them in an administrative way. But we are also, here's what we're going to do," she said, "is we're going to give an additional layer. We're going to have an advisory council to assist the ombudsman." Now, the advisory council and the purpose of them is to actually figure out how can we work this out, because she said in her bill, She said, we're going to mandate that the advisory council devises a mechanism to increase the collection rate for assessments, developing a conflict resolution process, a registration method for communities, and an alternative to the current lien process. And then she goes on and she says, the part of the genius of this bill is to make a smoother process to enforce the laws and having to go to court. Did you just pick up on that, listeners? She said, I've created a bill that what we need to do is have an ombudsman and an advisory council. And now, how are we going to deal with the resolution disputes and all of that? We'll leave that up to them to figure that out. And she feels, because of this, that she has created something wonderful. She's created a bill that's actually helpful. This is why I'm calling it the Seinfeld statute. It's a bill about nothing. She's saying, you know what? Look, I've got, and the genius of this bill is I've created something that will smooth everything out. But I'm going to leave the details up to the people that will actually be in the Ombudsman Office and Advisory Council. Ladies and gentlemen, that would be the same as me turning to someone and saying, you know what? I've got the answer to all of the gas emissions and the overcrowding that we have on highways and all the use of gasoline in cars. Here's my answer, and I'm ready to be elected and make this a bill. My bill would say we're going to create an office that's going to create the ability to have a transporter, so you can automatically transport from one area to the next. So you don't have to use cars anymore, and you don't have to worry about crowding of highways. Isn't that a great solution? But we'll set up an advisory council and let them work out the details. You'd look at me and go, "Are you crazy? Are you nuts? You haven't solved anything." That's what's happened here. That's what happens a lot with our politicians. They don't go through and say, you know what, we need to really take a look at whether or not this is an issue that should even be made into a law. No, they're quick and ready to write something and say, oh, the details, that's for someone else to figure out. But they are the first one to tout and say, look at everything that I've solved this year representing you. Well, hey, we need to take a break. Don't go away. When we come back, we're going to wrap up today's story about the Seinfeld statute, the bill about nothing.